Welcome to the Jerich Show, featuring your hosts Javvad and Erich Krohn. Timely topics, poorly presented.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Jerich Show. I, as always, am Javvad Malik, and alongside me is Mr. Erich Krohn. This is take two, actually. We started recording, and then we got halfway through, and then Erich said, Javvad, did you hit the record button or go live button? Yeah, I didn't.
You know what I really like about this, Javvad, is how you made that into a we thing. But, you know, this is us, right? Timely topics, poorly presented. Here we are. So howdy there, Javvad. Welcome to our show again. Let's just run through this one more time.
You know what it is? When people are stressed, they tend to make mistakes. And there's a story about this. Why don't you tell us about it?
Yeah, how perfect is that, right? So this story, I thought it was interesting. 4 in 10 data breaches have stress employees behind it. And, you know, I don't know if you noticed, there's a global pandemic going on. There's all kinds of crazy stuff. People are working from home. They got their dogs, their kids, their cats, all kinds of stuff running around. It is very stressful right now. And I even saw a story earlier, and it was either 40 or 44% increase in work-related burnout this year. And a lot of that is because we can't separate it out. Now, this story talks a bit about like the outbound stuff. So people are making mistakes and putting stuff in emails that they shouldn't be putting in emails, or sending information to the wrong people, right? Have you ever gotten an email that had something that was kind of a little, suspect or maybe even a little bit personal that was meant to go to someone else? I mean, I think we've all kind of had that happen, but that's on the rise right now. And obviously that can be a big issue. So certainly stress is playing a part in a lot of our lives right now.
It is indeed. It is indeed. So just moving on, news story that states the bleeding obvious. It is Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and phishing attacks are surging ahead of these. It happens every year. Anytime there's a major event, there's a holiday, there's some sales going on, there's natural disaster, whatever, you see people jump on the bandwagon and they just take them to the extreme. So whichever, I think, vendor, whoever's got a lab, whoever's observing these trends, they will tell you that there's a massive surge. So the important thing is people need to be wary. If a deal seems too good to be true, it usually is. So try to stick to reputable websites, ones that you know of, buy through trusted brands, don't divulge unnecessary information that you don't need to, all the regular good stuff, but it's just a good reminder. But having said that, not everything is old. There is some shiny hotness as well. Erich, you saw this new type of phishing scam. What's that all about?
Yeah, it's very interesting, right? So we've all gone to the websites and they pop up and say, "Hey, will you allow notifications?" Right? And of course, if you don't know better, people just go, "Oh yeah." Well, a lot of people don't realize what the notifications can do, and that is, it does more than just pop up things in your browser, right? So like on Windows, you have the little thing down on the right-hand side that pops up. They can actually push notifications to your desktop through that kind of stuff, right? Through that notification section there when you allow that. But what's been happening apparently is we're seeing some malvertising stuff or other sorts of click campaigns go through there, and possibly even scripts and things like that. So they're sending links, they're doing all this through that little area. So I think it's interesting because this comes back to, you know, we talk a lot about culture and we talk a lot about the human side, but teaching people not to just click on things that they don't really understand is absolutely vital and important. And I think it's a key thing that we have to deal with. And that kind of leads us to our next guest here, which is why we're wearing what we are, right? This is the most American thing I can think of. And what are you in there, Javvad?
It's more of a Pakistani outfit that I'm wearing right here. But yes, as you'll see, our guest today, I'm so excited to be speaking to him. I'm so honored that he's agreed to join us, despite me not even sending him an invite for this and expecting him to turn up. Stress. But, you know, he is one of the most colorful and authentic people we've had the pleasure of meeting in a long time. Someone that's done he's doing a great deal for security culture, inclusiveness, creating safe spaces, and more importantly, growing together. So please give a warm Jerich Show welcome to Mr. Mark Shawa, aka the Afri-CAN.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Welcome, Mark. Yeah, welcome.
I was tempted to start with the Lion King, and then I'm like, this might not work out so well.
Gotcha.
Like, what would be the one song that I think the whole world would know, and it's just started with something with Lion King, because we've probably got it in every country in multiple languages. But yeah, so thanks you guys for having me in the show. I was wondering, I was thinking maybe it's going to become the Jerich show, but I guess I can't yet take over.
Well, we'll see how it goes. If Javad doesn't get better about sending out invites and stuff like that, we may be auditioning. Who knows how this is going to go, right?
Exactly. I agree. Look, it's like in baseball. You got 3 strikes. This is strike 1. And let's see how it goes for the next 2 strikes.
Yep. I did an episode a long time ago without him, and I replaced him with a rock. And honestly, I think it was one of the best episodes we've done. It was a photo of a rock, even. And
a rock, not the rock. I was like, how did you get Dwayne Johnson?
No, not him. Not him. It was just one of the times he couldn't be bothered to show up for the show. So, anyways, Mark, we met through one of the recent conferences where we kind of spoke, and we saw you speak, and I think you even said it may have been like your first time speaking at one of those things, which I thought was amazing because you did such a great job.
So it really was. That's my website. It looks so cool. Oh my goodness, it looks like this when I say it. Oh, look at you. So yeah, truth is, it really was. So the Africa Cybersecurity Culture Conference that was held, I think, last week. It actually was my first time speaking at such a conference. I've always wanted to speak. Like, I've always told myself I'm going to be in a TED Talk or something like that. But it was really the first time, and it's tricky, not knowing how the audience actually responds. So you literally are talking to yourself and hoping that people are receiving the message. And Central African time, because right now I'm in Cape Town, even though I'm born from Zambia, it's like that was lunchtime. And if you want to know anything about South Africans in lunchtime, you don't come in between them. Don't ever. All systems go offline during that time. You rock up between 12 and 2 p.m. to just try and get paperwork done. They'll be like, no, the system's offline as they have their food.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Apparently, that's what happens to airplanes coming to land at that time. They get an automated response.
Yeah, you go back. You go back.
Yeah,
circle the guy who's doing this.
Yeah.
He's like, no. And they're like, what does that mean? Does it land? Like, no, go back. Just go.
So I thought your talk was really interesting, Mark. I mean, you covered a lot of things that Javad and I are pretty passionate about, which is because it was a culture conference, talking about the human factor and how they worked. And I got to tell you, one of the key things he said, and I wrote it down on this wonderful little envelope here, and it kind of reminds me of this. And I really just love the way you said it. And it has to do with people. And you said you don't have to be a cyber expert to do your part in cybersecurity. And, that really resonated with me because a lot of people, they think, oh, who am I? I'm just an employee. We have a security team for that. And what we find over and over again is the poor people in security, they can only do so much. And so we got to get people thinking about that. What do you think?
No, definitely it's something we need to talk about. So I love how one of the topics you brought up was around stress. Now think about it like this. You got a huge organization which has maybe got, I don't know how many people are, within like KnowBe4 or even like my organization. But let's say you've got an organization of 10,000 people. You know that your cyber team is probably it's a drop in the ocean in that number. But the expectation is that they are safeguarding everything, which doesn't make sense at all. It's like, how do you expect like 65 people or maybe even 100, even if you say 150 or 200 people to safeguard 10,000 people? I mean, we've all watched 300 and we saw how that went. Although some people, I hope. You have to realize that we need to empower people. Now, obviously, because cybersecurity, when we think of it's where it came from, and we think of information security and all the like, right? It's still uncharted land. Like, we still are looking at it like it's a side piece of the organization. We're like, we have business and then we have security, and business does its part and then security just plugs in. That's how we've seen it. Whereas you realize it really needs to be meshed together because that's essentially part of the culture, right? So if you're going to talk about corporate culture, we have to include cyber culture now. Think about it. I want to say that I'm really glad about the digital disruption that the pandemic has done because it's really opened the eyes to say that one, everyone is digital, you're working remotely. How do we work safely in that type of space? Now, I can be an employee, it doesn't matter which part of the organization, and it's easy for me to click on links now that I'm not in the office. I don't have someone telling me about a clean desk policy. I don't have someone telling me that, oh, have you double checked the information classification of the data that you're sending, right? So you're more likely going to have your guard a bit down, which means that there's a bigger increase of risk. We need to hope and literally pray that you do your part as the cyber team, and now we have to be at red alert. Anything happens. So it's something for me where it's like as cyber experts and leaders, we actually need to really empower each and every individual. Let them look at it and let them see how they contribute. You don't have to be an expert, as I said, is you just need to feel like you're part of the solution, which it is. Each and every individual is part of the solution. It doesn't matter the magnitude of the job you do. If you just report one suspicious email, which turns out to be malicious, guess what? When you have your cyber intelligence teams analyzing this, they can already block it. You've actually saved 10,000 people. So just by you reporting, clicking that one button, making that difference. I think it's always assumed that in cyber, because sometimes we're really horrible at communicating, I won't lie. We want to say, do you have your firewalls up? We use all this nice jargon. I'll say nice jargon, which is weird because you can't really have nice and jargon at the same time. But we use these big words, which are true because they're there. You want to say, what's this thing? Sometimes I even forget. You want to say SHA encryption, and no one cares. I don't care. I just want to do my job, right? And then you're telling them that in a non-humane way, hoping that they're going to do their part. Where if you just say that, look, think about it like underwear, okay? Then this is going to be a really funny example because it's just coming off the top of my head. So we hope this is going to go well.
Underwear's coming off the top of your head? Okay.
If I remove this, you'll see all the ideas. Trust me. So think about it like this. Telling the story to a person and saying, okay, your password, right? How often do you change your underwear? If you wear any. That's the first part. So if someone says they change their underwear every day, and I'm like, well, think of your password in the same light. You don't want to wear the same underwear consistently, all the time, every day, in every situation, because that thing is going to start smelling.
Now, the scary part is, Mark, that we tell people to change their password about every 90 days. Are you advocating that people wear the same underwear for 90 days as kind of a reminder to do that? Or that is one place where this is an issue.
It really is. So I think when we say it in practical sense, maybe not the most realistic thing, but in the principle, what we're trying to bring about is you don't want your password. You want your password to sort of be like your underwear, something that's consistently evolving, something that's consistently changing, so that no one knows that today Javad is wearing them jockey underwears again.
Really I told you that in confidence before we started recording.
Oh, did I invade your privacy now?
Yeah, it's okay.
It's okay.
Yes, but you
really, if we can.
Yeah, I really love this approach, and I personally am a big fan of using some analogies to try and explain things. And this is an area where I think, as an industry, we have been quite poor in conveying the message of what we want. We get so caught up in the technical issues that we forget who our audience is and forget to use the language that they will understand. So sometimes, and the analogies will vary. If you're speaking to the end users, it's a different type of analogy you use. If you're speaking to the business execs, it's a different kind of analogy you use. I suppose in overall terms, are there any tips you can share? Is that how do you create a good analogy, or how do you communicate better?
Wow, that's so. I've always told myself. So just like let me just put a little bit of highlights. So like with my identity, obviously, which has come together as Mark the African, it's about being able to create a space, right? But for you to create a space, you also need to understand your audience. Now, if you need to understand, that means you have to be able to engage. You have to be able to also listen. So it's obviously from a wide, if you're in a big organization, that's difficult. You can't reach 10,000 people and try to speak their language, right? So this is now where you definitely need to start developing a sense of intuition, and being able to understand your audience and say, okay, if I'm speaking to, let's say, executives, essentially, what is it that executives generally would be talking about? They're talking about strategy. They're talking about advancing the business. That is their 9 to 5 or their midnight to midnight, depending on people who don't sleep. I see you there, Eric. Um, so it's so you need to really take the time to understand your audience. And for me, it's speaking stories based on what their need is every day as an exec. An exec is talking about, the quarter plans. An exec is talking about revenue. An exec is talking about investment. An exec is talking about market share, right? And talking about digitization and in this day and age. So in that light, now you have to be able to say, how does this relate to you? That's the wrong way. You're drinking it the wrong way, Javvad. And for me, it's that. That's what I try to do to start developing stories. Is if I think of an exec, I need to know the medium in which they generally talk about. And me talking about, if an exec says, how do we start reaching out to more customers? My next question would be, in the light of you reaching to more customers, how are you protecting them? I always love to ask questions more than just give a directive, because then you begin to allow them to think. Then you can begin to start creating the story. I've found myself in situations where you get what we call the elevator pitch. You have 2 minutes with a person and you can't really tell them your whole story. It's easier to leave them with a question to get them thinking, because then they can get back to you. So leave that thought. It's always just about leaving that thought, but something which relates to them. But that's definitely a skill to learn. It's not something that you just wake up and are able to do. You really have to cultivate and want that relationship with people. And that's for me. I'm always about people. So in as much as cyber is my expertise, really where I lie is people. I think about people, and cyber just seems to be an avenue which I resonate with so much. And it talks about, again, creating safe spaces for people. So storytelling is one of the best ways.
Yeah, certainly. And Mark, you mentioned this about that. And a lot of us that are in security, we're technical people. Soft skills may not have necessarily been our strongest point, right? We don't take this job because we get to interface with people. I don't know people. Very rarely do I see someone in technology that they took the job because, oh, great, I get to deal with the users every day, right? That's just not where our heads are. It's not a bad thing, but it is something that we have to do. And years ago, I was on a panel on RSA where we talked about being the leader that people need, right? And bridging that soft skills gap to talk to leadership, especially like you just mentioned, but we also have to do it on the end user. We have to make sure it's relevant to them, that they understand why they're doing this, because the user just wants to get their job done quickly and easily and move on with their stuff. They're thinking about it a completely different way. And even on a larger spectrum than this, we have to understand the organization as a whole and their culture. Like I'm gonna approach and train people in a Silicon Valley startup very differently than I will, let's say, a law firm, because it's just different cultures like that. And we have to be very aware of that if we want to be effective with what we're doing. So I like what you're saying. Javvad, I know we've talked about that quite a bit.
Yeah, we have absolutely. And I suppose with Mark here, a question that it comes to mind often is that when Eric and me and you talk, we're talking from a very Western perspective of Europe or the US. I'm sure there must be things that you see pushed as sort of like American-led thought leadership that are, yes, howdy doody, Eric. But things like, so like NIST will come up with some standards and everything, or ISO will come up with some standards, which are very reasonable, very good, but maybe culturally they might not be quite a fit in some areas. Are there, what are those some areas which you think, could either be changed, or do you need to come up with something of your own, or how do you manage that cultural gap?
Yeah, now that is a very interesting question, and very difficult as well to answer. I think, and this is just my opinion, is I've also had this debate of adopting maybe Eurocentric or a Western type of standard and then reinvent or reapplying it in Africa. It's quite different. And I mean, one of the first things actually is just language. That's a very key thing. There's a big assumption that the language that's used in these standards is understood. Now we need to let's take a step back and think about human beings. How many times have we argued because of misinterpretation or something? It's so common. It's not like a difficult thing, but it happens. I mean, think about it. You could be, with your partner and you said something and next thing it's a haywire. And you're just like, that's not what I meant though. And we make this unconscious bias that every person understands the way we wrote something. And that's where maybe we need to start changing the medium in which we deliver these messages. So even when you're talking about a standard within a culture, it still needs to resonate within that culture. So I'll give an example. Like when we look at African cultures, it's very authoritarian. So you've got a very big top-down approach. Whoever is the leader is generally the person with the voice. What they say is generally law. Even like households are built in that type of way. So you obviously now want to say, how do I still get into this type of household? And now when we think of it like a business, you sometimes realize the businesses still apply the same way, but people receive that information very deeply. Some people are not a fan of just being told, go read a policy, and not a fan of just being told, adopt a standard. Some people want to have engagements, they want to have interactions. And one vital thing I've seen within Africa is storytelling. When we look at the mediums of which knowledge has been passed on from generation to generation to generation, it's been through storytelling. You would see, I mean, you gather around a fire. We just didn't have the marshmallows though. You could probably just have like, I was about to go too far. I'm like, oh, you probably have a wild animal there. It's a little bit more exciting. So, it's you would have, the person who's eldest there who is imparting knowledge orally. And probably that's one of the things that we need to start doing more often. I've realized that having conversations with individuals, which allows you to have that on the spot learning, starts allowing you to start understanding what is it that they don't get with this standard, what is it that they don't understand with this policy, and how can we turn a policy which is written in such great English, or whatever great language is there at that time, into what's relatable to them. And that's where there's such a big difference. And it's almost like, how do we now wide scale workshops with these standards, right? It's so difficult, but that's where we have to build, obviously, cyber champions, because you cannot create, let's say you have a standard for the whole of Africa, and you have one spokesperson to speak to over 300 million people. I don't think that's going to work. But if you can get individuals within those areas who are immersed in that culture, immersed in how people relate, you pick that up. Those are your early adopters. Like, when we talk about, what is this, the law of diffusion of innovation, or the theory, actually, it doesn't matter. That's what you want to do. You don't want to try and mass spread it out, because that never works. You look for those early people who are already interested in this.
Yeah.
And they become the people in your network who can send the message, because you create that common definition and you just tell them that This common definition is what we've all agreed on. And then within your space, begin to put it according to your audience. That I've seen such a difference.
Yeah, we've seen that within organizations too. And it's one of the things that we kind of preach too, is find those people that are naturally already thinking in that way and use them as advocates within the organization. Plant them around. So then they're showing what to do, through their efforts. And that creates the peer kind of approval or acceptance, right? So nobody wants to be the first one to do something. And if you have somebody that doesn't have that mindset naturally, it's going to be very hard. But if you turn around and you have somebody already showing them, then they feel like it's okay to do that. So the other thing I think we need to look at and be aware of when it comes to this is the technologies. Like my understanding, everything, like a lot of the things I've read and seen about Africa is things tend to be very mobile related as opposed to hardwired computers plugged into a network. A lot of mobiles are used. So the threats are a little bit different there. And so we have to know what to do. Am I right there?
Yeah, no, look, definitely we are more mobile centric. And obviously reasons behind that is, look, affordability. And the reality is not everyone can afford a laptop. Not everyone can afford a whole desktop. There's a whole lot of other issues within Africa that are there. And hence why, mobile inception was so big. You have more people with handsets in Africa than you would have in some countries. And that's just because it's easier. We do a whole lot more with our phones. You find that there's things around mobile money, so mobile money being something that you can do customer to customer immediately. So business to business, you are the business, someone is there. It's informal, but at the same time, it's helping build these microeconomies. So that's a different type of problem, obviously, which some standards are not going to be looking at. They're going to be looking at it from a world perspective, but you're like, you can't blanket it. You really now need to see where is the real problem, or what is the technology, in this case, as Eric just mentioned, what is the predominant technology that's being used and why is it being used? Because if you can understand why it's being used, it helps it even much better to advocate for the type of security you want to start enabling. So if you realize that it is the reason why in Africa people are using mobile phones more is because one, access to just say basic internet, right, in comparison to data, so like Wi-Fi. So they're more on data, and their data is used more for money-to-money transactions or used for social media. So voila, what do you need to start talking about? Stuff around secure social media behavior, stuff around secure banking behavior when it's on your mobile phone, because that is what actually speaks to what they do versus just saying, work from home. And some people are like, I work wherever I go.
Yes.
Because this is what I've got here.
Yeah.
Cool.
So it's really, something that we need to look at more, I want to say more intentionally. That is actually how we can really get ahead of the curve, even within Africa when it comes to security. Be more intentional about what problems we're trying to solve based on the technologies that we have got.
Yeah.
Javad, do you remember you and I talked, we did a story, I think, about this with some of the mobile phones coming pre-infected with some things. And it was in use very much there. And it was basically doing ad feeding and using that data, which, here in the West and a lot of places, we have unlimited data. We don't pay for it. We don't care. It's not a big deal. But when you're paying for your data and it's being used by something like that, that's a much more significant deal. So it matters more in an area like that where it's going to impact somebody, possibly financially, as opposed to us where, it's more of a commodity thing. So I think it's great hearing this, Mark. Unfortunately, I think we're going to have to wrap up here pretty soon.
Wait, not quite. Okay. We have a couple of minutes. So Mark, before we joined, I asked you to recommend some books. So these are the books you recommended. In 5 seconds or less on each book, why did you recommend it?
Shucks. Animal Farm, I just love it. Animal Farm, okay, 5 seconds or less, damn, I'm done. It had animals. Good. Starts with why, for me, is more on a personal level of purpose and identity. The Art of Deception really was what got me into cyber. I'm still waiting for Kevin to actually accept me on LinkedIn, so he better get one of these first contacts. The subtle art of not giving. Yeah, that one really talks. In as much as it's the title is abstract, it really talks about looking at the things that you really care about. So stop focusing on too many things. Transformational awareness, I love it. Transformation security awareness, I love it because I'm actually using it now. Thank goodness Kerry Carpenter is actually, he's the one who allowed me to get that book here in Africa, and it was so great. So I've been using it, I've been applying it and seeing the difference.
Fantastic. And then we also asked you about people who you said we should follow, and there was
definitely. So look, David McQueen, the McQueens actually for me, amazing people. David is a leadership coach, and so is Madeline, but they are a power couple. And then Anna and Lisa, literally, look, Lisa, I'm even in one of her books, by the way, that's just come out today, which is The Various Origins of Cybermen. So check it out on Amazon and look for it and make a purchase. But Anna's such a beautiful soul, part of No before, but started Popcorn Training, which was giving information on cyber, but in a more relatable way, which shows so much of how she was on the ground. And with Lisa, Lisa is another amazing person who I got to meet this year, and even how she wants to be more cyber aware. She calls herself the cyber geek, cyber girl geek, something like that, cyber geek girl, one of the two. But she'll be mad if she realizes that. And then the other two people are not in any way related, but Theo and Sylvester are two people from South Africa actually as well. Theo Baloy is someone who started Batu Shoes, which has blown up. And the big thing about him is that he's not trying to be in the big spaces. He's putting shops where it's accessible to people who generally don't have access to big malls, and bringing in that flavor of culture. And when you look at also Sylvester is in branding, and he's about branding with intent. Also known as one of the guys, like, 30 under 30, like entrepreneurial. He's got that spirit of building people, and I just love what he's doing out there. So I would recommend following these people, getting to hear what they talk about, getting to see the spaces that they're occupying, because they really are authentic leaders in their spaces.
fantastic. Excellent. That's so good. We've learned a great deal from you, Mark. Hopefully our listeners and viewers will have as well. We'd love to have you back on the show again when Eric isn't pressed for time. And
yeah, definitely. We can just remove him, actually, Yeah.
Wow. Why didn't I think of that? Okay.
Oh, there we go.
So Eric has been removed. Mark, thank you again very, very much for gracing us with your presence and sharing your knowledge. You're most kind. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Mark Shawa. This has been the Jerich Show. Follow us on jerichshow.podbean.com if you're watching us on YouTube. If you're listening to us on the podcast, then go to YouTube and search for the Jerich Show and listen to us again. Follow us on Twitter and social media. Follow me and Eric because we're needy, and also give our lovely guest Mark Shawa a follow. So thank you very much.